What's up, Star Wars Unlimited fans? It's Loopy here at Late Night Gaming, and we are here with a masterclass for Mono Blue, and we are bringing you the literal sauce. Jordan, you won one. Actually, it was a 4K on May 4th in Richmond.
Yep.
All right, and we're also happy to bring you DJ Stormtrooper, who is a garbage roller.
Hey.
And where have you played this deck?
So I took this to our 1K here in Fort Worth and hit top 8 with it.
All right, so good results. I think this is a very interesting deck. I actually was working on this myself. I didn't perfect it to the point that you guys did, so I'm looking forward to this. But tell us a little bit about yourself before we start here, though. Sawse, have you played CCGs before?
I've played a little bit of everything. I tend to move around a lot for work, so it's sometimes hard to get into the competitive scene for games that I like, but I played everything at one point or another.
Yeah, actually, there's a pro disc golfer that's always traveling that popped into the KTOD Discord, with us the other day, and he's talking about his Star Wars cards, the other stuff. What do you think about the game itself?
It's great. I love it so far. I think with the addition of more cards, it gets better, obviously. It's a little mechanical right now, but they did a great job designing it. The fact that you can even play Mono Blue, and that's a thing. There's a lot of good decks right now that are meta, quote unquote, and that's a testament to being able to design a good game.
No, and I think that the variety that you're seeing in Top Cuts, there's people analyzing that, is really a testament to how good the game is. What about you, DJ? I mean, from my perception, coming onto this in, I think, like September, I mean, Garbage Rollers were the first ones doing Star Wars Unlimited. But what actually brought you guys to the game? I don't know that.
Well, so we played Destiny, up until it died there in early 2020. And
Rip.
yeah.
I'm still mad.
Yeah.
It was a great game. We had a ton of fun, doing stuff with Destiny. And when they announced Unlimited, I'm going to be honest, like a lot of us weren't excited, right? We were like, this is FFG. They're just, trying to monetize their IP. It's going to be Star Wars magic, right? Move on. And it wasn't until I played a demo game at Gen Con, right, and started getting a feel for like, oh, okay, it's still got the back and forth action structure. Oh, we've got this aspect system that opens up some interesting deck building lines. Once we started to get a sense of that, I came back from Gen Con and I told Inception, hey, let's go whole hog on this, right? Let's get the website up. Let's do YouTube. Let's do the whole thing. And he was on board immediately. And, there we were online in September.
Yep. And a shout out to you guys, because I talked to Inception more than you. But I mean, Garbage Rollers do a lot for the game and the community. I commend you on your website. I commend you on your articles. I do the articles that we have for late night, on our site, but I really appreciate the written format, and just kind of the community building work is real important. And you guys should be proud of yourself for the results from going whole hog. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. We're happy to have done it.
And I appreciate you coming on, the show here for the masterclass. These videos have been great, but it's always good to get content creators. You obviously don't need the platform like some of the people do, but I think this is a cool deck. I've been telling people for a while that Mono Blue can beat aggro, and a lot of, Sabine players tend to roll their eyes at me. I'm usually talking about Turret, there, because I like Turret Blue, and I do that, but it's good to see people performing with it, and it is good to see the variety. So let's talk about the decks. That's what we're here for. All right, Sawse. Tell us about like the grand, broad strokes of the actual Mono Blue Iden deck. It's a control deck, right?
It's a control deck. It started as red blue Iden. But when you're targeting certain decks, like for example, Boba was for a long while considered to be the best deck. Turned out red didn't give you a whole lot against the Boba matchup. All the good cards against Boba were blue. So you didn't really need the red. And giving the flexibility of a 4-cost vigilance turned out to be very good. I actually didn't know how good it was against aggro. I mean, I knew it was okay, obviously, but then getting into Richmond and beating 6 Sabines and 2 Leia Reds, and then 2 Bobas too, it was very good against all those things.
All right. And then you ran a list that was, I think, what we decided 4 off of his at your 1K, DJ?
Yeah, so for my version, which for the record, I'd been cooking this up for months, right? Jordan really put the word out the week prior, before I was going to run this, which I was only a teeny bit upset about.
Sorry.
But so I dropped his 3 copies of Spark of Rebellion and one of the cargo juggernauts to put in 2 making openings and 2 Bendus.
Okay, and we'll talk about that. I don't think we have a slide for make an opening. How did that play?
It's a really good card, especially into the Boba matchup.
Right.
They've got all those two health shielded units that you can just wipe off the board.
And I think it's thought of as a Boba hate card. Everybody, I mean, that should be, looking for a tournament. You still have to adjust to your local meta. I mean, I think any really good player will do that. I mean, you got to have some sense as to what's there. I mean, things like Devotion are probably great if you're going to be seeing all aggro. Things like make an opening and some Boba hate cards. I mean, if that's what you expect to see. And I think that every good player will adjust their deck, somewhat knowing what's going to be there. At some point, if the event's big enough, you think everybody's going to be there, but I mean, at least I know in my areas in Milwaukee and Madison, who the better players are and what decks they're likely to be run, and they might get a card or two, that way. All right, let's kind of go through the play lines here. So Iden herself. I mean, why pick Iden? You have, I guess, one other leader choice, here available to you. But what appeals to you about Iden as a leader?
Iden, I mean, in this style deck, it's just better than Krennic. Krennic has some cool things about him, but really you just kind of want the life gain. And the shield is actually really important too. It's a lot of matchups where they don't have the clean ways to remove things. So like things like Overwhelming Barrage doesn't really cleanly answer shielded units. So I found Iden was significantly better in matchups like the Boba Fett matchup, for example, because they don't really have a way to interact with her to strat out.
And how much is she healing for you in a given game?
It depends on the game. It could be a lot. It could be a little. I mean, I've had her heal for definitely over 10 before. It just really depends.
So I think Avenger Vader is a hard control deck that a lot of people talk about, and we'll talk a little bit more about the differences here. The play pattern is very often to Super Laser Blast and then flip Vader. Are you guys doing the same thing here?
No, with this deck, you want to get Iden out earlier. I mean, partially so she can do some work on her own, right? Maybe kill a unit and get an extra heal. But then when you actually play the Super Laser Blast, because all the units die simultaneously, you can heal off of your opponent's dead units as that blast is happening.
Yep. Because even if she's killed in the Super Laser Blast, she still counts every enemy unit defeated as part of her heal.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so it can be a 3 or 4 heal instantly with the blast.
Okay. So on her non-deployed side, she has the ability to tap to heal one. I mean, tell us about that and how it actually plays. What's your decision-making process as to when to use that and when to not?
It's very subjective. Depends on what's going on the board. Generally speaking, it's if initiative would save you more life than she heals, you'd probably take initiative. But there's caveats to that too. So if they have a 3/3 out and they have 4 resources, they're probably still going to play something else. So you might as well heal. It's just you got to really feel out the situation. If you think they're going to play something else, if they pass, are you okay with taking the extra damage? It's subjective, really.
Also, don't underestimate the ability to just use her as a path.
Yes, that's true.
The way she's worded, I think it makes people think that you have to have killed a unit, but you don't. You can just tap her to do nothing, and that saves you having to pass.
Yep. Turret can too. I mean, turret you usually give some random unit health because if there's a unit out, you can. I mean, I think Chewbacca can be played to no effect, and just tap, even if you don't play a unit. So, and stalling is important in.
Oh yeah,
extremely.
Because especially, I imagine with control, you're typically reacting to what they do.
Yeah, the more information you have, the better.
Right. So, did you both actually at times just tap her to pass?
Yeah, it happens
100%.
fairly regularly too.
Any particular decks where you're trying to do that more or less? For people trying to pick this up?
More mid-range and control, I would say. Not so much aggro.
Against the aggro, initiative becomes more important, so that happens less.
Okay. Makes sense. Do you play around takedown with Iden? If you're going against a blue deck?
Not usually. It really depends. If I think they're going to do that, it's usually okay, even if they do. In the blue decks, your leader is not that important anyway.
If your opponent's playing blue, that means they're not on aggro. So in those situations, saving Iden to the next turn probably isn't that big a deal either.
That's true. I don't think it matters really.
Yeah, and I run into this because I do play a lot of turret, which is another leader that's very susceptible to a takedown.
Yeah.
And it's surprising to me actually sometimes, people that will just hold 4 of their 5 resources, the whole turn, let me hit them for 7, and then still be passing, with 4 open. I mean, you do sometimes actually just think claim, because you then take the initiative if they've passed. And that's where the stalls come in too. I mean, if you still have your Iden tap, you can prevent them from making that play. Whereas if you have actually passed, if they take the initiative, that's the end of the round.
That was a couple times that happened at Richmond where someone passed. And I was just like, I take initiative. Okay.
You can always deploy your leader later. I mean, and I think that that's something that as the game evolves, people are realizing more. Help is the biggest one that way. I mean, it takes them 8, but I mean, a lot of the good Pelt players will save it till it really matters. All right, let's get to, certainly a strong card in the deck. I mean, I think we're talking about what the strongest card in the deck is, but Vigilance for 4 is a strong play.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
It's really the reason we're here.
Right. All right, so talk about how Vigilance plays it against different kinds of decks. I mean, against aggro, what are you typically doing?
Heal.
Yep. Get rid of that A-wing. Heal my base for 5. Yeah, that's a huge turnaround against Sabine or Leia.
Did you have aggro playing Wolf into you?
Yeah, it didn't matter either. I had a game where I was playing against Sabine Red, and they played all 3 Wolves and all 3 Saw Gerreras, and I still won. It's right now, the fact that it's 4 actually really helps too, because generally speaking, you're playing Wolf and Iden in like Iden Green or Vader Blue. You can play Wolf on 6 because that's their turn for them to do Vigilance. But with vigilance at 4, that's not the case. It's very spread out. You can play it on 4, you can play it on 5. Not a big deal at all.
I think that's right. You know, and I haven't actually. I do play Sabine Red as another deck that I do play. You know, I actually cut Wolf entirely eventually because he wasn't doing what he needed him to. I think it's better against Iden Green. You know, because it's more predictable.
Yeah, the decks that play out of aspect for vigilance is more predictable because it's just it's 6 is when they can do it.
Okay. What about the other parts of the card? Discard 6. I mean, is that something that you did throughout the tournaments?
DJ.
I don't think I ever actually milled anybody at my tournament. Like, I never faced a control mirror. So I might have used it a couple times, but I never actually had to go to mill as the win condition.
That's interesting. And I mean, part of that is a meta call. Both of you actually saw primarily aggro.
Mine was more mid-range, I think, is what I saw more of.
Boba?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Boba is not, you don't really need to mill them, you can, but usually they only have so many threats that you deal with their threats, you're fine.
Did you use the shield option?
I've never used it.
I mean, occasionally, if you're not going to go the mill route, you throw one on Childson. That could be pretty good.
All right. You guys both have tested against control mirrors?
Yes.
Okay.
Lots.
So talk about Restock.
Go, Jordan.
Restock is probably the most important card in the deck. It's not the best card, but you have to have it against the control mirrors. Otherwise, you're just going to lose the mill mirror. It also has very cool synergy with Search Your Feelings. So you can restock important cards, and normally they're stuck on the bottom of your deck. But if you search, you can search for anything. It doesn't matter. There's a very important line on Search Your Feelings that says shuffle your deck. So now you get 4 very good cards against whatever matchup you're playing, and they're all live draws again.
Actually, I think one of the best Star Wars Unlimited players I know that's a content creator, told me this card will never be played in a competitive deck. So
Well,
I'm gonna call.
That's pretty good.
I'm gonna call that receipt right now. You know who you are. Did you?
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, Garbage Rollers thought the same thing. We were like, this card's terrible, it's overcosted. And then, in the weeks leading up to the event, as I imagine Jordan was doing the same thing, I was kind of banging my head against like, okay, I've built this blue deck that I know can beat the aggro, Sabine that I hate with a passion. And it's also pretty good against Boba. So now how do I solve the control mirror? And when I realized that you could combine Search Your Feelings with Restock, I was like, oh, well, that's it right there. I'm going to play Vigilance 5 times and win the control mirror.
Right.
Oh, yeah. 100%. It's actually not even bad to go Search Your Feelings for a Vigilance against aggro. Because it costs you 4. It's not that big of a deal. And there's only so much life they can get through.
Right. I mean, they're going to run out of gas, before you, and then your top end is better.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The Cargo Jug. This is one of the 2 cards I think reprinted in set 2. It serves a purpose. You ran 3 of these, Sawse?
Oh, I ran 3.
How'd they play?
It's so good. I can't even begin to say how good this card was for me, especially against the aggros. Obviously, I played a lot of aggros. But on 6, when Iden flips and you're playing a Cargo Juggernaut, it's just so hard for them to win at that point. And it also presents a sticky unit on the board. Mm-hmm. So you're able to start. The old Magic term is turn the corner, where you stop reacting and you start attacking your opponent. And there were many games where it was just like, okay, Speed's now dead on turn 7 or on the 7 resource turn because Cargo Juggernaut. They can't really do much to it. It heals you for 4, so it basically blanks a perfect for a cause I believe in. For a cause I believe in was so bad against me. I could not. I don't know about DJ, but it's really bad card against Iden Blue. It does effectively nothing. It either wins you the game right then, or it does nothing.
Yeah, I had a lot of players who were dropping those, mid-game against me, and you just heal it all and you move on. I'm like, thanks for wasting your resources.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Cargo Juggernaut, it's so sticky, right? It's really hard to remove this unit, which I think is where the value
Vanquish
really
is the
comes
only
in.
thing that hits it. Vanquish or blast.
Just
right?
about, yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think that, I mean, it is a key card to the game if it does get like a set 2 reprint, right? I mean, it serves a role. It's a common. Everybody has access to it. I mean, anybody who's bought a booster box probably has 3 cargo jugs.
Yeah, it's also really good against like mid range too. If you think about like Boba Green, there's not a whole lot of clean ways for it to interact with it either. You can't overwhelming barrage it because it has a shield, so it's okay if you do that. Even like some of the Palp decks, especially Palp Green, that play a decent amount against that. It's shielded units are kind of their bane.
Right. All right. Entrenched, both of you had access to this?
I hope so.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about the use of Entrench, because I think we were talking a little bit before about how it plays in different decks. Do you cast it more on your units or theirs?
Theirs.
And what are you looking to entrench?
Fire spray.
Fire spray, Boba, anything in space early on, really. It's just that good. It's a fantastic card.
And that's
against Vader decks, you've got to have a plan for Vader when he flips.
Yep.
And Entrenched is a really good plan for
Avenger Vader, Blue Vader.
Any Vader.
Any Vader, yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Did you see a lot of Fang Fighters?
Yeah.
Trying to deal with this?
Yeah, the only Fang Fighter I saw that was particularly good actually got the entrenched off of my own Iden. It didn't kill Iden either. It's just weird, but yeah. Iden was entrenched against aggro. It was very hard for them to deal with on the ground.
This is one of my favorite cards. I'm one of the few people that plays it and insure it just because I find it very versatile.
And early on, people thought the card was good. No one was playing it. It was weird. It's a very good card.
Now, do you cast it on your units from time to time in this deck?
Yeah.
Okay. And what are your possible entrenched targets for using it on yours?
Iden or Childson, probably.
And entrenched
Or Bendu in my version.
Yeah, Bendu too.
And we'll talk about that too, because I think that's a
Play
good,
it for free.
it's a good include. Entrenched would obviously take Iden out of takedown range, which is, I think relevant to some decks if it's there, and it's also cast on your own unit. It's to clear that arena for everything else. I think it's the reasoning.
I got to get, before we go off Entrenched, I got to give a shout out to Late Night Gaming for ruining my first guest appearance with Entrenched. Early in the meta, I was trying to make Chewy Green work, right? Throwing down a lot of home ones, and they would inevitably get entrenched and do nothing.
I let me think. I don't have a blue deck that I don't have it listed. I mean, I think it is a great card. It's versatility, right? Because it plays different. Yep. I keep mentioning Churret. I will do hopefully a master class. I don't know who's going to actually interview me if I win with Churret, but me and Woo probably should be the ones that talk about Churret, frankly, because we're there. But yeah. I do like it there still. I mean, against aggro, I'm very often entrenching my own Yoda, just because it's so strong to have, that kind of a ground unit that restores too. But I mean, oftentimes there I'm entrenching there against your deck. I'm probably holding my entrench for an Avenger. I mean, that's probably what I'm doing because I don't have the space to really deal with Avenger very well. But entrench is a problem. And against Iden blue, you don't have actually a upgrade removal, I don't think, listed for either of you. So if your thing gets entrenched, I mean, it's not attacking unless you cast another.
No, that's another good point. Like, Biden is probably a lot better when talking about entrenched because, generally speaking, if you entrench their leader or something, they could attack your leader. We saw it in Florida with the Gee versus Luke and stuff. It's a little awkward because they can just attack and kill something. You can't do that against Iden. You can attack, it's just going to take the shield out. So you still get another action.
And I think that's where the shields for like the Cargo Jug and Iden, come in. I mean, the downside of entrenching a fire spray is barrage, because then it's a gigantic barrage if they can cast it. It only matters if they have something that they need to hit.
Yep.
For that much damage. Yeah, makes sense. Good stuff, guys.
And a lot of times those entrenched units will get cleared up when you drop Super Laser Blast.
Right.
Yeah, that's usually the plan, which is why you kind of want to play 3 of both. If you're playing 3 entrenched, you kind of want to play 3 super lasers because it's a little awkward when you don't have both sometimes.
Before we get to that, let's talk about Bendu. You ran this, DJ?
I did.
How did he run? He's a cool character.
He was
I love
good.
Rebels. I love the actual, story of Bendu.
In my practice games, I found I was dropping a surprising number of games to like the really extreme aggro. Either, like Leia or Sabine Red, stuff like that.
Right.
And so just after watching, control decks win big events the 2 weeks before my 1K, I kind of figured people would be cycling back around to aggro to try and deal with some of that. And Bendu just helps. And, with the 7 health, he's almost impossible to kill right off the bat. It's going to take 2 unit swings usually. And if he does manage to make it to another turn and you can attack with him, then 2 cost vigilance. Who doesn't love that?
Only thing better than 4 cost vigilance. 2 cost vigilance. He's a good unit. I've actually played more mono turret than mono Iden. I mean, I don't know that he plays there because Obi's a thing, but it makes sense to me that that Iden would want him for that exact role. All right, Super Laser Blast. Important card for the deck?
No, it's trash.
Yeah, you could probably cut it.
Okay, your sarcasm is overwhelming. So how often are you casting Super Laser Blast? A typical, let's take aggro out of the equation because they probably lost if you get to the Super Laser Blast.
As much as you possibly can.
I'm going to say average of once a game, because typically you'll cast it and then start turning the corner and taking control of the board.
Usually, yeah. But just the fact that you have Super Laser changes how they have to play. So they can't overextend into you, which means it makes your single removal better. So if they play Emperor Palpatine or whatever, you could just vanquish it. It's not a big deal. If they play a couple things like Palpatine plus something else, then it just gives you more value on your Super Laser Blast.
Right. And it's a card that I think you have to be conscious of as the opponent.
All the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because I mean you can lose by overcommitting into a Super Laser Blast too. I mean that's definitely
the amount of times someone has like U-winged on 7 resources and I'm on 7 and I take initiative and just Super Laser Blast right afterwards. It's astonishing how often that happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. And one matchup, I don't know if we'll talk about this in the matchups, but you actually identified Mon Mothma as a card that actually provides problems for you.
Yeah, the Green Han deck's a little rough for us because it's just a lot of value and units coming back and coming out of the deck. But the Han Green's not kind of moved away from the Mon Mothma because it makes it better against the aggro decks. So I don't know. It just depends on the version they're playing. But being able to Mon Mothma, get a unit right open, bounce it to your hand, draw a card, play Monmouth again, get another unit. It becomes difficult to go 1-for-1 with that deck after a while.
And my example, my addition to the Vader deck that was actually in response to all the Super Laser Blast related was a Tarkin unit. Because I think it's the same thing. I mean, you get enough gas. I mean, it's for that. It's just he's a crappy body. He's a 2/3 for 4, which is horrible. But I mean, if he pulls a Vader and a Pelp from your deck, I mean, that's what you want. Against it, it's kind of a go wide. So it's interesting to me that you said that in Identified Mon, because that's the card on Hero that does the same thing.
I'm more scared of Mon Mothma than Grand Moff Tarkin. I can tell you that.
Oh.
Tarkin's more prone to whiffing.
Well, depends on your Imperial density. Nerd Parker tells me 34 is the magic number, and it seemed to work at least for that. All right, Avenger. This is one of the primary win cons of the deck, I imagine.
It's the best card in the deck.
How we close.
Okay. So tell me about an Avenger lock. I mean, that's a term I think I've heard before. I mean, but what are you trying to do? I mean, with the Avenger.
Yeah, DJ.
I mean, with the Avenger, ideally you've played Blast the turn before, so your opponent has 1, maybe 2 units on the table. You drop Avenger, and it's going to kill the unit immediately. It's going to kill another unit when it attacks the next turn. It's going to put pressure on your opponent's base. It really does everything it needs to do. And for the record, Inception did not think this was good when it came out. So take that.
Oh, just throw in the shade. Yeah. He didn't think Avenger was good?
He didn't think Avenger was good.
Did he read the card? All right. Childson. I mean, he's certainly seeing more play now. I mean, how big were your Childsons typically as you played through?
They're always 6/6. Well, okay, like 90% of the time. Ideally, they're 6/6s.
So yeah, he creates a lot of decision space on turn 1, where you're like, well, I could play this, Inferno 4 that I drew, or I could just pass and tank up Chilton. I think probably playing the unit is usually the better call. A 5/5 isn't that much worse than a 6/6.
I would probably disagree with that. It's the first time we've disagreed on anything. I think, especially if you have like a Power of the Dark Side man, you don't play Inferno 4. You pass, you power, and then you Childson. A 5/5 still gets gotten by like Fleet Lieutenant and do it, whereas a 6/6 doesn't.
That's true.
It's good too, and I think that, I mean, Childson hurts Green Bean probably more than Leia, at least in red.
I do think the versions of aggro that play Tarkin Town, you probably want to just play all your stuff and play a 5/5, because they have a way to kill it regardless, whether it's aggression just kills it outright, or they attack with a 3/3 and then they Tarkin Town it, so it doesn't really change the math at all, and you kind of just want to keep up your tempo against them. But against Green Sabine, for sure, you just play it for 6.
Now, if you get a 6/6 Childson, I mean, are you using him to then clear units, or are you attacking their base?
Oh, the first attack
every time.
No. The first attack is usually against a unit. Usually. Because the most common play pattern against Sabine is, especially Sabine Green, is they play out their Sabine. And you don't want to leave their Sabine out, because then they can steadfast ECL it over the top. And they kill and they do a little bit of overwhelm, and you're kind of in a weird situation then. So usually the only time I wouldn't go to base is if I was attacking the Sabine, which in my case happened 6 out of the 10 matches I played.
And that makes complete sense to me. Is that, I mean, you use it to kill the leader Sabine because Steadfast is a thing and ECL is a thing. But
yeah,
I think it was Guy that made the point that, I mean, attacking their base for 6 is pretty good too. She only has 25 health herself.
Oh, it's fantastic. There's no doubt about that. I think It just really depends on what's on the board, what your health state is, if you're being pressured or not. But I think more often than not, I did trade on the first time I attacked with Johnson, and then because I knew the later the game goes, especially against aggro, it doesn't really matter that much. You're going to be hugely favored into turn 7, 6, 7, 8, 9 anyway.
And it's
So that was okay.
now. Did the Sabine players suicide the Sabine into Childson if you dropped it there, or would they just pass and then that's when you're having to attack it the next turn?
Yeah, no. Usually it just bricked up the arena, and then more often than not they would pass, and then you would just either kill something or attack their base for 6.
All right,
Hey, Jordan, did you ever play any like mind games with Childson by like holding back maybe like a super laser blast? Just be like, oh, Chilton's only a 5/5, let him walk into it.
I've definitely done that before by hiding a card, making them think it's like a Restock or a I'm Your Father or something like that, and being a super laser. In Richmond, I didn't because it was all aggro. I just wanted that extra health.
I did it a couple times. It's fun.
It's definitely cool.
and probably a better play line against like a yellow Sabine too that might have Spark herself, deciding whether to cast it. Right.
Yeah, keep back like a vigilance or something, so they don't know you have it.
All right, Death Trooper. I think that this card, certainly it's popular. You both ran it. How did it play?
I think I played it once all weekend or on the tournament, like one total time out of 26 matches or games or something like that. It's the weakest card in the deck. It's probably the first card that will be cut when set 2 comes out, but it's also kind of needed.
You mean you'd rather have a 2/5 shielded that heals 5 than this guy?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit. As De Niro said, how did Death Trooper play for you, DJ?
He's good. Spoiled by the garbage rollers, by the way. Occasionally your opponent will have a 2 health unit sitting around, and you can snipe it.
Yeah.
But I stayed true to my nickname of DJ Death Trooper and resourced a lot of these guys.
And
It was mostly resourced.
And you must have too, Sawse, given how little you played him.
It was resourced a lot. A lot.
And I mean, you see what the meta does. I mean, if there's lots of 2 health units out there, I mean, all of a sudden he's a lot better. I think the fact that super laser tech is as prevalent as it is, and then this guy gets a lot of play in villain blue green, I mean, makes people kind of want to gravitate towards 3-4 health units. It could swing around.
Yeah, it just doesn't really kill anything cleanly in like the Sabine matchup. I think the time I played it, it killed a wolf or something like that. But
Right. But I think that part of that is the Sabine matchup accommodating this, and then probably super laser tech more, because it just sucks, if that guy gets a kill, for the aggro. And that's always subject to change. There are some interesting 2 health units that have been spoiled in set 2 too. I mean, so it depends what's out there. I mean, if he gets
it won't be in the deck in set 2. I can promise you that.
Right. All right, Spark. Why is it in your decks? I mean, you're crazy. This is double out of aspect. Why am I wrong?
I'm the only one that played it, I think. I don't think DJ did.
Right.
But going into Richmond, I expected there to be a lot of Vader Blue, like mill control decks, and having this when they don't have it is as close to an auto win as you're going to get in this game. So it was really important to have that, especially with the time constraints of how the matchup works, because a lot of the times you'll play like a 40-minute game 1 trying to mill each other out, and it's the 55-minute round of the tournament, so you're probably not going to finish the second game at all. So the person that won that first game is going to win the whole match.
And that's the tournament rules. I mean, coming into play. I mean, if you have a first game win and you don't finish game 2, it's going to go to the person that won first game. I suspect I know the answer. What card are you actually looking for to spark out of their hand?
Restock most of the time.
All right. DJ, you didn't play this. Did you have any games when you needed it?
Yes. So this is my biggest regret. We got to differentiate a little bit between the types of control, right? There's the hard control that Jordan's been talking about, where
Yeah.
the win condition is mill, but then there's also the sort of ramp, super laser based or super laser tech based control, right? Like an Iden green or a Krennic green.
Or Pelp Blue.
And yeah, and I think I judged the meta right in that there wasn't going to be a need for Spark in my tournament to beat the hard control mirrors, but where I needed Spark was against those soft control ramp decks, because what I got beat by was a Vader player who was just ramping as fast as he could into Relentless and shutting down my game, right? If I had Spark, I could have taken that Relentless out of his hand and probably won that matchup.
As a Vader player myself, I mean, certain my game plan into Mono Blue is ramp as aggressively as possible, and it's hard for you to stop it because Vader can kill his own super laser tech, whether you play in the ground or not. And then force surrender. I mean, I don't have Relentless listed currently, but it's definitely close in the sideboard because
No, put it in the sideboard. Definitely put it in the sideboard.
Yeah.
And it's also good to force throw people. I mean, failing anything else, you can do 9 for 1.
One thing I'll say about Spark is I played basically all aggro list except for the Nova player twice. So the card was blank to me. It did effectively nothing, and it didn't hurt me at all.
And that goes back to Guy's point in the first masterclass too, but Star Wars Unlimited by its nature kind of rewards narrow, high payoff cards. Because the worst it can be is a resource, and you need those.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a thing that applies to all decks. I mean, sometimes that card that you only need for one matchup, it's okay to be in your tournament deck, because if you find that one matchup, that win's important.
Absolutely.
All right. The Separatist. Dooku was in your board, I think, Sawse?
It was in my board. It came in. I think it came in against everybody I played. It came against aggro and Nova. There was just a lot of cards that were a little weird against the aggro. They weren't bad. Like I'm Your Father is okay against aggro. Usually either kills something or draws 3. But Dooku, he was surprisingly good. I'm still not entirely sure that I would play him in a main deck or something like that, but he's a lot better than I had given him credit for.
I had him in early versions of my deck and was generally liking him. He's got a lot of the advantages we talked about with Cargo Juggernaut, right? Coming in shielded. He's just a really solid unit.
Right, and if you can get it, I mean, he's usually going to 2 for 1, because if you're casting him, they have something that has 4 or less health. I mean, I think that for either aggro deck, that applies to all of their units, with the exception of Steadfast on green, and probably Chewie, if they're running that list, on yellow. But, I mean, can stabilize against aggro. He hits hard. I mean, that he does. Yep. The deck you probably don't want to play him against is blue, that has takedown.
Even then, like if you kill something and then they kill it, it's an even trade. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
That's actually a 2 for 1 still, because he got something and then they had to take down to remove him. True. But it's an he is an interesting unit, and I think that the shield is the right point, because he's naturally resistant to barrage, which is a dominant card in the meta. I mean, I do think barrage is still the best removal because it can hit farther, but it's getting closer. And a deck like this with that use of shields is how you deal with it, or the best way. All right, here's a polarizing card. Both ran I Am Your Father. Did you have this in your list before, Orlando? When Guy and George ran it?
Yeah, this card was always good in control. There's a point where it either First of all, it kills like all the good important things that you're expecting anyway. Vader has 7 health, Luke has 7 health, Boba has 7 health. Like it just straight out kills them unless they want to give you 3 cards. And if you give hard control 3 cards, kind of hard for you to win.
I played this on a Luke, I think round 3 in my tournament, and the guy let me have him. He just killed his Luke, put him away.
That's probably the right
I couldn't
choice.
believe it.
It is the right choice. I mean, there's not a card in my turret deck that I won't lose to I Am Your Father, because I mean the only way to beat hard control is to make a top deck, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Late in
running
the
out of
game.
resources.
Right.
I think I'm Your Father's better in this deck than even the red blue one, because there's just way more comeback with the healing from like Cargo Juggernaut and Vigilance for 4.
Yep.
So I think it's probably the best version of I'm Your Father we've seen yet.
And it does synergize with Childson. I mean, I think all of that still holds true.
Extremely well.
Childson's the one card in the game that it really synergizes with.
All right. So let's talk about some set 2. I love that you guys, when I gave you a platform, you want to talk about this. The client is a reveal. Do you think this might play in your deck?
Never.
Nah,
Complete trash.
it's only a 2/5.
Complete trash cannot sell shoe.
Yeah, it's just a 2/5. Yeah, I like my shields, but it's not really. I don't know.
Okay. So, I mean, the sarcasm, I think, is evident here. I mean, this guy's busted, right?
Yeah, the stats make no sense for a 3-cost unit, and that action is just gonna make I question how aggro is gonna win games in the set 2 meta.
Right.
Like with this card.
Right, because I mean, you don't lack for one removal.
Absolutely not.
So you just tap him before you kill the thing you were going to kill anyway.
Exactly. It turns every removal in your deck into a vigilance, basically.
Go ahead.
It's if it's not the best card that's been shown so far, it's very close to the best card.
Oh, that's a hot take.
There are people that are arguing it's too slow because they can just attack you with whatever you bounty, but it effectively blanks the attack, which is kind of what Iron Blue wants to do anyway, is just get to that point where they're at the advantage versus whatever you're playing. It's a 2/5 shield. It's just incredible. And there's weird things you can do with it, like with Grand Inquisitor, with Boss.
Oh, it's sick in Inquisitor Blue. I've actually started testing that already. Because that's my favorite deck is Inquisitor Blue.
Aggro is going to have some problems. They need to print like another wolf, like a good wolf, like just a good unit in general that just has that extra. You can't heal.
I think you're right. I mean, I think you need something that's sticky that stops healing, because wolf ain't it. I mean, wolf, if you time it right, can be an effective play for that deck, but it's not enough.
I don't know if I play Iden Blue anymore. Like, if they put out a even halfway decent another blue villain guy, I don't think I need to play Iden anymore. It's a client.
It's interesting.
I'll play the better hero.
Right. And I mean, you already mentioned Inquisitor. I mean, he can do multiple bounties, the same turn with Inquisitor, because he can ready because of it. I also think that the official tag is relevant. I mean, you have Pelp and his Royal Guards around, and Pelp Blue plays this guy.
It's extremely relevant. It's also really good with the calculated lethality card in set 2, where it just kills a 3-cost guy, and then for every upgrade that's on him, because you could put experience on your 2/5 shielded guy, and now it's a 4/7 shielded guy on turn 4 or turn 3.
And not to make the client's heads too big too, but he has a shield. I mean, entrenching shielded units is also a thing. I mean, from time to yeah, that's a card. All right, the other guys you identified was Pershing. I don't think he has the power level of the other, but what are you thinking with this?
He's good though. We talked earlier about do I play Inferno 4 turn 1 and sacrifice that Charlton experience on, round 3? Dr. Pershing, we don't have to make that choice anymore, right? You just slam him turn 1, you go to turn 2, and you replace the card.
Yep, because he can hit himself, for among other things.
And if they don't kill it, it's the same thing as I'm Your Father. Eventually, you're just going to outvalue them and win the game. If they do kill it, you're not even that mad, especially if you have initiative, because you got at least a card out of it.
Yep. He does, for Inquisitor, he can draw 2 turns, turn 2. I mean, he'll slowly kill himself, but do you care? I mean, if you're getting your cards, it's still a blue-red deck. I mean, you're playing Control if you're playing Inquisitor blue. I think this is a good guy, too. So I'm excited about set 2 too. I started the testing, but it's, I think the mono decks in general are the ones that get the biggest buff because the set pool being so limited. Set 1, you're playing cards that maybe you wouldn't in an ideal world just because they're the best blue options.
Yeah, like that's for example. But we just saw the double cunning card, the first one, and it's ridiculous. So if the double blue card is even a fraction of that, I'll be very excited for this deck.
Though double yellow does seem to get all the best cards. They're the only ones with universally good cards.
That's because Warren designed them.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he played.
Jeremy's on that double yellow life. That's why they get the good stuff.
Yeah, that's okay. I don't know. We'll find it. I actually think Protector plays very well in Churret, but I didn't have it in. I didn't either. But all right. Well, let's talk about matchups. What was your path in Richmond, Sawse? What did you actually play against?
First 2 rounds were Leia Reds, so Leia Rebel aggressive thing with Tarkin Town. The third round, I won those 2. Third round was Vader Green. I lost to that deck because that deck's a little rough, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a second. And then I played 6 Sabines in a row. 4 Sabine Greens and 2 Sabine Reds. And beat them. And then I played a Boba, a Sabine, and then another Boba.
On the top cut. All right, and you were 7-1, and the number 1 in Swiss. There wasn't an undefeated.
No, I had played the undefeated Sabine player in the last round and beat him, so I took his spot.
Right. So, and then the top cut did split, so not everybody stayed, but you won the games and played them out.
Not the top cut. So top 16, we played that. Top cut was to 16. We played that, and then we split top 8, and then 4 people left, including Tata, which I'm still mad about that, but. And then we played out for the trophy essentially.
Okay, and you did end up taking home the prize. Tell me about the Sabine matchup. I mean, what are your key cards? What are you looking to do?
It's all pretty good if I'm being honest. Vigilance is obviously fantastic against the deck. You really want your ideal turn to be probably skip turn 1, power the dark side, and then Child Sim for a 6/6. It's usually the best play against them.
All right. What about you, DJ? Tips on the Sabine matchup? Did you have a lot of aggro in your field?
I got a couple. I got 1 Sabine, 1 Leia. I had a Boba Green, a Luke Green. And then I dropped games against Vader Green, who was, rampant and relentless. And then last round actually lost to a Boba Yellow. That ability to use Bodhi in particular to pull Super Laser Blast out of my hand really hurt because he was putting a lot of units on the table and really creating board. And without Super Laser Blast, I couldn't turn it around.
All right. Well, let's talk about. We'll talk about I think all of those matchups. What about the aggro decks? I mean, what are you actually looking for as far as play lines? Anything that you can do for somebody looking to improve that might be looking at this deck?
Jordan, you wanna?
Do you guys both think you're favored against?
Oh yeah.
I think so. I mean, I built the deck because I hated Sabine Green so much. So that was always the goal, was to be favored into that matchup.
It's just a matter of how much can they feasibly do, and is your life total more than that with healing and stuff? And it usually is.
Yep. And both of you are on a 30 hit point base?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I tried the 25 for a while, and the shield just wasn't reliable enough. Right? I'd play it to get saboteured or something and create no value.
All right. Any differences as far as what you're looking for with the Sabine yellow deck? There's a lot of that around Blind Sabine.
Not really. It usually plays the same. Millennium Falcon's a little annoying just because it's like direct damage and it doesn't get killed by vigilance, but there's not a whole lot of difference other than them being able to play sparks. Kind of got to worry about that a little bit. But I'm not even sure if that's a problem, because usually if they're sparking, especially when it's early, it makes so they can't play as much as they would want to anyway.
Okay. All right. What about Boba ECL? I mean, that's a good deck. It's strong. You feel your favorite into it?
The only thing I would worry about really in that matchup is after the board, if they bring in 3 relentlesses, right, then they're in a position where they can ramp, get that out, and potentially cause you problems.
Yeah, relentless is definitely the biggest thing. Other than that, Boba Green specifically just doesn't have enough things to really kill you. Your things line up. Your removal lines up really well with everything they're trying to do anyway. It was a pretty easy match overall, but that's the same with Vader Blue. Vader Blue has a really easy match against them too.
Let's talk about Vader Blue, right now. Neither of you ran into it in the actual tournaments. Okay,
No,
so
sadly.
what's your game plan into Avenger Vader?
Kill their stuff, draw lots of cards, mill them out, spark a rebellion there, restock, and win the game. It's not as easy as I just laid it out, because there's a lot of timing issues and stuff. Especially if they restock, you have to really figure out the point at which they don't have another way to get back into the game and just beat them that way. But it's fairly straightforward, especially if they're playing like a bees list from Florida. It's the easiest match we have, frankly.
All right, so your camera went on and off, but I see you back, DJ. Any comments about Avenger
sorry
Vader?
about that.
You're okay.
I mean, at the end of the day, you're better at milling than them, right? So I think you're happy to play that game. The only thing in testing I saw was, just have a plan for when Vader comes out, right? Keep that entrenched in hand or something so that they can't go aggro when he drops.
Did either of you have a Boba Blue? Because that's another one popping up.
It's a newer thing, really. I don't think that started to hit people's minds until after Richmond. But I mean, really get in there anyway.
Now, was it you, Sawse, that ran Bounty Hunter Crew in the sideboard?
Yeah.
Okay, so what are you thinking with that?
It's a great card, just in general. It gets you back whatever you want. It makes it so you're impervious to the random vigilance mill onto your restocks. It's just a great card.
And you would have used it in a hard control matchup that you didn't play.
Yeah, I did side him against Boba too, because being able to get back whatever the best removal is pretty good as well.
All right, let's talk about Boba Yellow. I mean, I think DJ, you said you dropped a game to it. It's just got to be a tougher matchup than Boba Green for the deck because of some things that Boba Yellow can do with Bodhi. What's your game plan? Anything different that you're watching out playing against a Boba Yellow player?
Well, so the match I played, I think I got a little bit unlucky in the first game because he pulled all 3 Bodhis right in the top third of his deck. right? And so I was running low on cards, like just, with that amount of removal out of my hand. And then the second game, I couldn't draw Super Laser Blast. So I was kind of keeping him under control, but I wasn't able to turn in that second match, so and that one went so long that playing out of game 3 wasn't really an option. So I worry a little bit when we get into set 2, right? If Hero Yellow gets to be a better color than it currently is,
Right.
then you've got decks running Bodhi and Spark of Rebellion, and that could be a hard counter to what we're doing.
And Kira.
And Kira was revealed today. Makes something cost 3 more, which is relevant if it's Super Laser Blast. I mean, then
Absolutely.
you got to deal with her then.
On Boba Yellow, though, like it's better than Boba Green for sure. I still think that we're favored in the match. It takes a lot of weird things for it to not be favored. I mean, a lot of like the KTOD Boba Yellow doesn't even play Spark Rebellion in their sideboard or anything. Pretty sure. I saw that the video came out today, but Boba just has less real threats to deal with, and if you get to a certain point, like I think you're fairly comfortable playing off the top of your deck. You can still not draw Super Laser, obviously. That would be bad, but I don't think it's as bad as there's people that think it's like a 75% win rate for Boba Yellow, and I don't think that's the case at all.
Yeah, I mean, my teammate Poem is a big Boba Yellow guy. I mean, it's a good deck, and it increases with the sideboard. I mean, I think that the Search for Feelings actually might be relevant to what you were just talking about, trying to find a blast too, because it can tutor that just like everything else. I guess the other comment I would have is that it's safer to entrench a Fire Spray against yellow than green. Because at least green you have to worry about a barrage, whereas you don't.
I don't think we're ever worried about barrage.
Yeah, makes sense with the amount of shields and the amount of units you have. All right, probably a tougher matchup. Did either of you have a villain blue green? A ramp soft control deck that you had to go through?
No, they were surprisingly absent.
Right.
It's after I didn't even make top 16 at Florida. There wasn't a whole lot of them around. There was a couple of them that made like top 16 at Richmond, but the decks, it's probably either close to 50-50 or a little more favored to them, depending on the build they're playing. Really, the key card is Relentless. They're playing Relentless or not.
And how much they can ramp, I think is for all of them. Any comments on Iden green versus Krennic green versus Pelt blue as two things to watch out for, or differences between them? I mean, they're very similar decks.
Palp can steal your Avenger, so that's not a huge plan. Usually you kind of just force them to flip their Palp on something else and then go for that, but it's all pretty much the same deck.
And it is a good deck. I mean, I think that it's maybe just happenstance. I think that what happened in Orlando is a lot of them went to time on the first one, is what it sounds like, because they were trying to mill, and then they all kind of eliminated each other from the top cut. That probably wasn't the case with Richmond, but I mean, I know some very good players that are very good on Iden green and Krennic green, and then Pelp.
Yeah, it's at best 50-50, probably a little less than that, maybe 40-60 for them.
What about hero green decks, Luke and Han?
Han's bad.
Yeah, we talked about Han. I'm not too worried about Luke, honestly.
Nah, the shields don't matter. You can shield anything you want. It's still gonna die.
Okay.
And they don't have the aggro chops to get in front of you.
Yeah, they're usually not playing all the value stuff. I think Philip Ritchie was playing home ones in his deck, and maybe even new wings, but it's not really the same thing as the Han deck. They can do it a lot quicker in the Han deck. It's also, they have that extra value with different stuff they have.
And then why is Han difficult? I mean, you talked about Mothma. I mean, what's he doing that causes problems?
They have all the units all the time. Just keep bringing stuff back, bringing stuff out of their deck. It really depends on the version they're playing. Obviously, if they're playing the ones without Mon Mothma, it's a little easier. But a home one to get Millennium Falcon back is very annoying.
And they can run Spark on the
Yep.
cheap too, and make your Super Laser Blast more vulnerable. Yeah,
And
I've
they're playing
seen
Bodhi,
them
too.
running Bodhi too.
Yeah, we
Right.
play Bodhi.
Okay. All right. So, I think that's we should talk about Vader Green. That is my deck. What is your game plan against a Vader Green as opposed to Avenger Gator?
Entrench you and hope you don't have a Relentless.
That's pretty much it. Try and use Spark to get the Relentless out of their hand before it comes down.
I would suggest that ramp into Force Surrender and Force Throw is pretty good too. But,
Yeah.
Relentless is the first card I bring in. And actually I'm trying to find a room for it myself. It's not that I've had to deal with item blue. I actually, I shouldn't say too much because I have some tournaments this weekend, but I think that this item blue deck is very interesting. And it's something that I've thought for a while, that blue is kind of the natural counter to aggro. And I think it's really cool to see, somebody kind of figure it out and pull it off. All right.
It's not an easy deck to play, though. That's for sure. There's a lot of decisions you have to make. That you have to make the right decisions to beat aggro. I could see how somebody picking up this deck would still lose to aggro and think it's not favored.
And anything in particular that you can point to as far as the decision points?
I mean, it's all pretty straightforward to me, but I've played the deck 150 plus times, so I'm not quite sure.
Yep, and I think that actually is a perfect transition to what we're talking about next, which is tournament preparation. I mean, would you guys agree that it starts like weeks before the tournament, trying to get ready and actually get reps?
Yeah, I locked in a couple weeks before the tournament and just started grinding games on Caravast, which is really great.
Shout out
Just,
to Monk, who's local to me. I've actually been on the dev server a very long
That's
time.
cool.
But
Yeah.
I can't mention that given I'm publishing it, but I think that reps are important on possible digital options. Were you jamming games regularly as well, Sawse?
Yeah, it was a long while. I was on, again, the Iden Red deck for probably at least a month beforehand.
Which is
And
a
then-
good deck too. I mean, I played Taxter with it too. I mean, I can't beat it with aggro. I'll tell you that.
I think aggro has a better time against that deck than Vigilance before. Yeah, but it just playing a lot of games, preparing for the tournament, really kind of identify the three most likely decks that are going to be at the tournament is what I would do. Because you're never going to be able to play a deck that's good against. You shouldn't be able to play a deck that's just good against everything. Let's play the three most likely decks. So going into Richmond, I thought it was going to be Boba Green, Sabine Green, and Vader Blue, especially after Florida. And I was looking for a deck that was good, if not favored, into all three of those. And the result was Iden Blue was good and favored into all three of those matchups.
And you said you were over 100 games with this deck prior to the tournament?
Oh, yeah. That probably close to 400 at this point.
All right. Any advice for the aspiring CCG player? I think that the Star Wars IP brings in some people that maybe hasn't played, as many of these, in the past. I can tell you that I quit Magic in '94. I mean, the two CCGs I've played are Destiny and this. But what are you looking at as far as the day of the event itself?
Bring snacks, bring water, hide them in your backpack, 'cause usually they don't want you to bring it into the convention center to begin with, especially if you're going to a big event.
Right.
But you got to have that stuff, especially because I think at Richmond, like a can of Coke was like $5 at Richmond. That's ridiculous.
And I really, if you've watched some of the master classes, I mean, I I hope that some of the organizers start caring more about their players. I mean, when they're choosing these venues, because I mean, they didn't search your bags in Richmond, did they?
No.
They did in Orlando and actually confiscated skacks from people, and it's just there. And then, you know, players have some choices too. I have a local in Madison. He's actually a former Magic pro, great guy. He actually includes pizza in the entry fee. You know, and
Solid move.
speak with your wallet. Attend events where they treat you like a person.
In Richmond, we didn't even get a lunch break.
Right.
So
and that's common in CCGs.
Yeah. It's rough. Especially if you're playing a control deck like this, you're not likely to get a whole lot of time to yourself to go relax, go to the bathroom. Or God forbid, I vape, so it's very difficult for me to go outside of a convention center and come back in, and then I had very little time. Thankfully, there were a couple games where it was just very quick, and I was able to do some stuff.
So, aggro players, keep signing up for events so that you get the quick ones now and then for the control.
Yes,
and if you really have time issues, then play aggro yourself. I think Tata said that.
Yeah.
What about you, DJ? Any day of event advice?
Fortunately, our event was great. Like the venue is in a nice little sort of like the downtown of a kind of mid-sized city, Burleson. So, you know, there was soul food next door, beer across the street, barbecue 2 doors down. You know, food availability was high.
Maybe not the beer while you're still in the tournament, though.
Yeah, but
if you're a guy that drinks, you know, I would say, I think actually it was Bobby, you know, mentioned that in his video. I mean, if you regularly drink a beer, maybe one is not gonna kill you, but probably should not take 5 shots, you know, before the top cut.
I just got a lot of mileage out of just going outside, right, and just kind of clearing my head and warding off headaches with some sunshine.
And you got to know what works for you too. I mean, I think Phil talked about he's the guy that talks. I actually really like, you know, I'll talk until a couple of minutes before, and then I like to play a song, you know, in the AirPods.
That was a big thing for me too. Like, especially playing long rounds, finishing the game, and then my friend who went with me would want to talk to me about the game and talk to me about his game and stuff. And I'd talk for a little bit, but then at some point it was just like, no, I need to just go outside and just kind of reset for the next round.
Do you guys take notes?
Yes.
And what are you tracking?
I mean, for me, it's usually if you're in the top tables, what kind of cards that are unpredictable for the person to be playing. There's, for example, the Sabine. At Richmond, there's 2 different Sabine decks. There was the new version that John Tata was playing, and I think 2 other people were playing. It was more mirror related. It didn't have wolves in the board. So looking at just different cards that people were playing and just making notes or mental notes, you can't bring those notes with you to the table. So you kind of just have to know them, though. The rule is you have to bring
a fresh
piece of paper. Yeah.
Now, do you take a fresh piece of paper and track life?
No, I don't usually do that unless someone else isn't doing that. You should, absolutely. But I was worried about time concerns with playing mono blue at the big event. So I was worried. I just wanted every little instance of where I could save some time to be in my favor. So if they didn't have paper and they weren't covering it and I wasn't using dice actively, and you'll see in the videos that where they recorded, I'm constantly going, okay, I'm at 17 or I'm at 18, verbalizing what my life is and confirming with my opponent.
I do that too.
Over and over. Yeah. But if they're not taking notes, I have to take notes because then there's nothing to reference to if they're not doing it.
Anything on the note subject, DJ?
I didn't take notes. I'll probably have to get into that. It was hilarious, though, watching the note-taking players trying to deal with Iden because the health totals are constantly up and down, right? It's like up 2, down 1, you know, down 2, up 3, right? So they just be filling up whole notepads worth of my health transactions, and and most of them were doing the notes and putting tokens on the base at the same time. So it's like this is just a lot of work.
And I do
Like,
think
let's just play the game.
tournament regs for Star Wars Unlimited require you to mark on the base somehow. So I think that has
Yeah.
to. I believe Magic actually a lot of Magic players take paper notes of life. I'm told. But,
Yeah.
because it's required. But I think it is a good thing to do. You're right that something like this with that many health changes is there. But I mean, it could be important. I mean, you never know if something's going to get missed, and a game could be won or lost on the health. Having your record is important. All right. Well, I think this is great. I think this is a very cool deck. I mean, cheers to both of you guys for performing with something, that's a little bit outside of what the kind of top decks going into release were. Any final thoughts for the aspiring Versio, looking to, bring this to a tournament?
Have fun. Have fun. If this isn't the kind of deck you want to play something else. It's fine. There's plenty of decks that are good in the current meta. And it's more important for you to have fun.
All right, take us home, DJ.
I mean, if you're an aspiring player, I gotta say, check out garbagerollers.com. We got a solid new player guide. The guy who beat me at the tournament with Vader Green told me, "Hey, I just picked up this game like 2 weeks ago, and I read through your new player guide," and then he proceeded to beat me. So
That's cool.
Way to go, Ryan.
Yeah, I wouldn't be mad at that.
The first 1K I played, somebody else top cut with Vader Force Ramp, and thanked me for the deck list. I ran into 2 aggro drawing perfect, which is that deck's weakness. I've hopefully fixed it a little bit since then, but I think it is good. And I should have mentioned that the new player guide that Garbage Rollers has is the thing that I point people to, as far as written resources.
Right.
And I appreciate everything you guys do, your whole team, but keep up the good written conduct. All right, so that is the Iden Blue Masterclass. I hope you enjoy the videos. If you like it and want to see more of these, we have a playlist. Hit like, subscribe. And if you watch this far, on an hour and 17-minute deep dive into a deck, you are literally my hero.
Well, thanks for having us on. It's been a blast.
Thank you. I appreciate it.